Namaskar. This is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. As India faces a brutal onslaught of a second severe savage corona wave, its impact on lives and livelihood is proving to be devastating. A shaky economy with eroded macros now stares in our face, and authorities have been seeking to assure us, with misplaced optimism according to us, that things are not so bad as they are made out to be and that things will get better very soon. India's chief economic advisor says that there is a lot more knowledge this time on how to handle the crisis, and he rules out any national lockdown being imposed again. Reserve Bank governor says that last year's learning should help us to meet the crisis this time and in managing it much better as it unfolds. India rating says that the second wave of COVID crisis may not be as disruptive as the first one was, because according to it, the response of the authorities this time is ensuring that it is being confined, it is being contained, and that lockdowns, if any, are only regionalized and localized. It also says that unlike the first wave, this time the response of the government is not abrupt. At least somebody accepts that the response last time was ad hoc and abrupt. In a similar manner, trying to reassure, the finance minister also says that things will get better, recovery is happening, and that the industry must trust the government at times of such a crisis. The question is, what is the knowledge, or what are the learnings that we have got from last year, or what are the lessons that we have learned from last year's crisis, such that we should be able to manage this year's crisis in a much better manner, as these authorities say. Any lesson comes from an experience, and what we experienced last year was a debilitating crisis on the Indian economy. Let's summarize what the crisis was all about that we experienced last year. The first thing that we experienced last year was a national lockdown. A national lockdown that brought the economy to a complete standstill. It disrupted the economic process in terms of demand and supply. And its impact was so severe that even though the lockdown was primarily in the first quarter of last year, its impact continued to linger throughout the last financial year. The second thing that we experienced was because of the lockdown. We experienced an unprecedented contraction of the Indian economy. In the first quarter of last year, the economy contracted by 24.4%. That continued, such that the financial year 2021, we have ended with a shrinking of the economy by 8 to 10%. This shrinking is a lasting one, and it will take us time to recover. If the current estimates turn out to be true, then we will be in March 2022 where we were in March 2019. So even if we grow this year, we will just be there in terms of our economy where we were in March 2019. So the second was a contraction that we experienced for the first time. Because of this, we experienced rising joblessness. 200 million jobs were lost at its peak during last year's contraction and crisis. Of course, many of them came back, but about 40 million jobs never did come back. Because of loss of jobs, income got decimated, expenditures got decimated, and the economic process slowed down. The other thing that was experienced was rising poverty. 50 million Indians are estimated to have fallen below the poverty line. And this reverses a 20-year trend that India has been witnessing, where poverty was falling year after year. This year, 50 million additional persons have fallen below the poverty line, a matter of deep concern. That also reflects on the middle class. We experience a year where 1/3 of India's middle class has sunk into poverty. Another matter of deep concern if we look at the growth chart of the economy. The result of all this is we as income earners, we as entrepreneurs, we as entities have faced a depleting confidence in the economy. The confidence of the producer went down, the confidence of the consumer went down, and as per the Reserve Bank surveys, they were at all-time lows. With the economy locked, with operating cash flows gone, with loans not being easy to come by, what was imminent was a default in bank loans. We were about to experience a collapse of the banking system in case there was an across the board default in repayment of bank loans. And thus, what we experienced was a moratorium. A moratorium of 6 months wherein you did not need to repay your loan, and thereafter some kind of a restructuring for all those who got it in order to delay and defer the repayment of the loans that were taken. While all this took place, we experienced a year where growth in India's lending by banks was at a 59-year low. Lending fell sharply. At this time, what was experienced by us was some kind of a fiscal stimulus. A fiscal stimulus to battle the crisis, which to us was a stimulus which was never there. It was a farce. And along with this stimulus came monetary policy initiatives by the Reserve Bank of India. As is popularly said, it is the RBI that did the heavy lifting, but without matching support coming from the government by way of a fiscal stimulus, the impact of RBI's monetary policy initiatives was felt very little on the ground. That's what we experienced in the crisis last year. The issue here is, what are the lessons that the government should have learned from last year's handling of the crisis such that it would be better equipped to handle this year's unfolding crisis? The first lesson, which is very obvious, is that when it comes to handling a crisis, timely policy response and delivery is the key to resolving it. Relief needs to be given immediately and direct, and relief which is not immediate and direct, but which is promised, deferred, or postponed is of no use. And in last year's fiscal stimulus, relief truly was not immediate and direct. The second lesson that comes from last year's experience is that any failure to take action on time means more fatalities. More fatalities in terms of businesses collapsing and closing down, and also in the ground level as far as health of individuals is concerned. Thus, the key thing is to act immediately on time. Failure to do so is only going to aggravate the crisis. The third lesson that comes is, if an economic crisis has come because of a non-economic reason, we've had an economic crisis because of a health reason, then the resolution is to give immediate financial support in order to support all those entities and individuals which are now struggling for survival. If we will not do that, if we do not give immediate financial support, then the economy will only go into a deeper crisis and the suffering will be far more widespread and far more extensive. What is needed is immediate, direct financial support. That is the third lesson of last year's crisis. The fourth is, of course, a timely and adequate fiscal stimulus becomes the need of the hour in order to support struggling enterprises. The fifth lesson is, the Reserve Bank of India is no substitute for the Government of India when it comes to tackling an economic crisis. The RBI can do its bit, but what the RBI cannot do is spend. This kind of a crisis needs spending by the government by way of a fiscal stimulus, direct or indirect, but immediate spending. The RBI does not come with a basket to spend. It is the government that does that. And thus, when it comes to tackling such a crisis, the RBI does not become a substitute for the government, which the government tried to do last year. Further, the lesson is that the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank of India may prune interest rates, may increase money supply, but all those initiatives are of no use if there are no borrowers for that increased money supply, despite loans being at a cheaper rate. Thus, even the MPC will prove to be of no use if the overall environment is such that the borrower is not enthused to borrow. The next lesson out of such an economic crisis is that jobs and livelihood need to be saved at any cost. If you want to prevent the economy from slipping into a coma, support jobs, prevent them from being lost, support livelihood to ensure that entities and businesses do live for another day. The final thing that is very clear is health matters. Health matters, lives matter, because if there are no lives, there will be no livelihood either. The economy, after all, depends on us, and thus the most important lesson out of such a crisis is protect jobs, prevent them from being slipped away at any cost. These were the lessons that come out, according to us, of last year's experience of an economic crisis in India. At the moment, India faces the worst COVID infection wave in the world, and the unfortunate part is that it is going to worsen further. The peak has not yet been reached. Its impact on health, its impact on the economy has been debilitating and devastating, and it is only going to aggravate further. The question is, are we better equipped to handle it because of lessons, because of knowledge that we got last year as the chief economic advisor and the Reserve Bank governor claim? The question is, have we learned the lessons of COVID 1, such as to make us be better equipped in handling COVID 2? To us, it does not look so as far as the economy is concerned. We are not talking about the health at all at the moment. We are talking about the economy. It doesn't look to us that lessons have been learned. And that is very apparent from the fact that the government continues to somehow downplay the impact of this crisis. It seems to be reluctant to accept the extent of the crisis that we are facing on the economy. It continues to have a wait and watch approach with a hope that probably things will pan out on their own and that no further initiatives might be needed. That explains why the MPC initiatives themselves are at a dead end and the government itself does not speak of any fiscal stimulus to support a doddering economy, which is so much needed at this moment. So, were the lessons learned? At the moment, it looks to be no. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Hello everyone. HW News English is 2 years old now. When we started this venture, we promised ourselves one thing, that news should remain free, because right to know is the right of every Indian. But to keep news free for everyone, we need support from some of you. And thus we have rolled out membership on our YouTube channel HW News English. But mind you, the membership is completely voluntary. The programs that we were doing earlier, that we are doing now, will continue to remain free. First level is a basic level. Here, you can be our supporter by paying Rs 199 per month. This membership gives you certain perks and benefits. The perks include unique badges in front of your name, a live show from Mr. Sujit Nair and from Mr. Akhilesh Bhargava per month for our members. You can also vote in some exclusive members-only polls. Now the second level is Super Supporter. Here you can be our Super Supporter by paying Rs 3,999 per month. This membership will include every perk that comes with basic level. Additionally, our Super Supporters can be a part of a WhatsApp group where we can have discussions and suggestions on various topics. The second perk includes a gift pack with our merchandise. And the third perk is a Google Meet with Mr. Sujit Nair, where you can join the meet and ask your questions to Mr. Nair face to face. Lastly, if you like, we would give a shout out to our super supporters in our programs. So, hope to see you soon with our badges.